Welcome to this presentation on copyright law and its relationship with compensation models in the music industry. Yes, it's a melody played in a penny arcade. So, in this introductory discussion, I'll be providing a brief background on the progression of copyright law, its constitutional purpose, and where we are today in the digital and streaming economy. The ultimate objective is to determine if the current compensation models are fair and equitable to creators, rights holders, and other stakeholders, including the consumer. Yes, even the consumer is a stakeholder. In order to understand where we are, we need to know from where we came. So let's begin. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution provides the basis for copyright law. Let's read that. The Congress shall have power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Think about that for a minute. This passage is often mistaken as being a privilege afforded to creators, but in reality, it's a privilege provided for the benefit of the public through an enticement for the creator who will hopefully produce works that will contribute to a better society. So, really, this part of the Constitution is for the citizens, it's not for the creator. We just want the creator to create so we can have a better place to live. So, in keeping with the direction provided in the Constitution, Congress gave us the first copyright law in 1790. Apparently, at the time, though, music was considered more of a leisure activity. And so musical works were actually left out of the law. But as we know, that would later change. However, it took a number of years for that change to occur. It was at that first revision of copyright law in 1841 that Congress decided to add musical works as having protection. And they also, at that time, increased the length of time for protection to a maximum of 28 years. As you'll see as we go, Congress really moves slow when it comes to copyright law, especially in relation to musical works. So that first revision was 1841. Well, it was not until 1870 that the second revision of copyright law came along. And in that second revision, works of art were given protection. And they expanded the copyright owner's bundle of rights to allow for derivative works, translations, and dramatizations. One of the key factors and important things for the recording industry with this particular revision is that album covers and sheet music, the covers on sheet music would all be included with this as works of art. So some might think, well, what does that have to do with the music industry? Well, it there you go. It protected things like album covers and other different works of art that were incorporated with music. Again, moving slowly, in 1897, Congress decided to add a right of public performance for musical works. It's very interesting that they had already given that right to dramatic works, such as plays, back in 1856. But for some reason or another, they did not include uh, music in that. Who knows why? Moving on, we arrive at the 1909 Copyright Act, which was the third revision of the law. This was an important revision for the music industry. Um, the act has often been criticized for its failures, but the one thing it provided was a mechanical royalty for recorded music that would be governed by a statutory rate payable to rights holders for each copy produced. At the time, recorded music was distributed through piano rolls and phonorecords, but eventually this is going to end up applying to magnetic tape, such as cassettes and reel-to-reels and 8 tracks, vinyl records, digital audio tape, mini discs, CDs, and even digital downloads, as well as on-demand streaming. Um, so this new revenue stream is created with the 1909 Act, and it is going to become the foundation of the future of a multi-billion-dollar recording industry. Another interesting little tidbit is that the statutory rate was set at 2 cents per copy for piano rolls and phonographs. Um, we'll see as we move through the slides what's interesting about that. Another interesting little tidbit about the act was that coin-operated machines in penny arcades were exempt from paying royalties unless an admission was charged. So therein lies where I derived the title of this study, A Melody Played in a Penny Arcade, which actually comes from an old song, Paper Moon. It was recorded by many, many artists, Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, the Mills Brothers. Look it up. You'll enjoy it. Moving on, the next big thing for the recording industry doesn't come until 1971. And it's the 1971 Sound Recording Act. Boy, does the government move slow. So in 1971, the Sound Recording Act provides protection for sound recordings as a separate creative work. The songs, music, compositions that were embodied in the sound recording already had copyright protection, but the actual sound recording itself, the affixed sounds, did not have protection as a separate creative work. So that's what happened in 1971. This is going to lead us into the fourth revision. We have the fourth revision since 1790, and it's the 1976 Copyright Act. With that Copyright Act, a copyright tribunal is formed, and it's commissioned to set royalty rates. That tribunal does not exist today, but another form of the tribunal is in play. At that time, the statutory mechanical rate, which had been, as I mentioned, a slide or two back, 2 cents. It had been 2 cents from 1909 all the way up through 1976. They raised it to 2.75 cents. I'm not sure that kept up with inflation, but at least it was a step forward. So now we move into the digital age. And in the digital age, copyright has three primary changes. There's the Digital Performance Right in Sound Recording Act of 1995, which provides a compulsory license for digital transmission with fees paid to the record label, feature artists, non-featured musicians, and non-featured vocalists. What's interesting about this is that previously, the artist in a recording got no royalties. Whenever a song was played on the radio, in broadcast radio, or in TV, there were no performance right royalties for the artist. So this was a big, big thing that allowed the artist to receive royalties, but only in digital transmissions. The broadcast radio industry lobbied very hard and still kept royalties out of broadcast radio for the artists. An organization called Sound Exchange was set up to administer these digital performance right royalties, and they collected the royalties and then paid the label 50%. The artist, featured artist, received 45%, and the non-featured musicians got 2.5%, and the non-featured vocalist got the remaining 2.5%. The next big thing, just a few years later, was the 1998 Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And as copyrighted works were being disseminated throughout the internet in digital form, and they were being posted on social media and different platforms, the service providers got a little nervous and were worried about infringement. And so the 1998 Digital Millennium Copyright Act gave them some protection there by limiting their liability from infringement claims for the posts of their users. It also allowed for ephemeral recordings for broadcast purposes. So that's where a broadcaster can make a copy of a protected work if it's for the purpose of disseminating it in under different platforms, as long as it has been licensed. Then it takes 20 more years before we reach the 2018 Music Modernization Act, which is one of the most recent changes to copyright law. And most of us have heard about that particular change to the law. It deals with a lot of the digital and streaming issues that we have now today. And it also created the Mechanical Licensing Collective, known as the MLC. And the MLC collects and distributes digital mechanical license fees. So what's really changed, though, since the early 1900s? Today, the basic revenue streams still exist that were in place 100 years ago. The only real difference is that the formats have changed and expanded. We have a lot more places where music can be played and listened to. We still have print revenue. Sheet music is still sold. It was sold back then. It's still sold now. We still have synchronization revenue. Back in the early days of film and TV, there was synchronization. We still have it now. We still have performance revenue. Once Congress provided a performance right back in 1897 for musical works, that stream has existed all the way up still to today. And we still have mechanical licensing revenue that was created with the 1909 Act. Had it then, had it now. So there's not really a lot that has changed. The numbers have changed. The stakeholders have definitely changed. There have been a lot more stakeholders added. And the opportunities for royalties have been expanded. Some say, though, it's diluted the marketplace, but it's provided more of an open Wild West kind of atmosphere for even smaller creative startups to find ways to profit. So how does the money flow today? Well, I'm going to conclude this presentation with a few slides that really kind of are self-explanatory, and they show how the money flows through the different licensing formats. Here's how mechanicals flow for the composition. That is the musical work itself. Eventually, the money gets back to the songwriter and publisher. Public performance of the composition itself. You have radio, TV, venues, streaming. That's collected by a performing rights organization such as ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and they distribute it to the publishers and to the songwriters. Synchronization income from advertisements, TV shows, film. That money is collected by the music publisher, and then the music publisher pays the songwriter or songwriters their share. Then we have sound recordings. Sound recordings, the money flows to the record label from either on-demand streaming or digital or physical sales. Then the record label distributes that money to the artist, the producer, musicians, however it's agreed upon or contracted for to be divided. Now these are again on demand. So these are like mechanicals that relates to compositions, but this is the reproduction, the product that's being sold. In earlier days, it would have been CDs or cassette tapes or vinyl. And of course, some of those are still sold today. Then there's public performance. This is collected by the organization Sound Exchange, which we mentioned earlier. And then Sound Exchange divides the money up and pays it out to the label, the artist, and then the background musicians and singers. And this public performance money comes from satellite radio, webcasting, internet radio, those type of platforms. And then finally, we have synchronization from the master recording. And that is negotiated and paid to the label, and then the label pays the artist. So, as we move forward in this study, we're going to explore whether or not all of these players and these stakeholders are getting a fair shake. And hopefully we can answer that question in a way that will either create proposals for copyright changes, or we will find that some of the compensation really is fair and it really does produce a benefit for society that was fully intended by copyright law and the Constitution of the United States. Thank you for listening to this presentation. See you next time.